Hey guys, so I wanted to talk a little more about borderline today. I've heard it defined as an adult manifestation of psychological abuse. But of course not everyone with borderline was psychologically abused, so this is where the internal invalidating environment that I was talking about in my last video comes in. Because carrying that around with you and having a chronically low self-esteem and constantly putting yourself down is a form of self-abuse. I wrote a little bit about this for The Mighty, and I'll link the article down below for anyone if you're interested. But basically I said that I was telling myself, it's not anxiety if everyone really does hate you, and it's not depression if you really are just an awful person. So these are the kinds of things I was telling myself, and schools like to talk about bullying, and there's all sorts of anti-bullying campaigns. But what they don't talk about is when you're bullying yourself, because sometimes it's not other people doing it to you, it's you doing it to you. With the depression and the anxiety, before I knew how to handle it, it just came with constant put-downs. And as a child, I grew up feeling like there was something wrong with me because of my anxiety and my extra sensitiveness, my hypersensitivity. And that's really the recipe for borderline right there, is an invalidating environment and hypersensitivity. So growing up feeling that something was wrong with me led to the development of this borderline personality. And of course there was nothing wrong with me, I just didn't know I had a condition, social anxiety. I didn't know it had a name, and I didn't know that I wasn't alone. And that is one of the worst aspects of mental illness, when it makes you feel alone, when it makes you feel like you're the only one who feels this way. And of course, learning that social anxiety was a real thing and that other people had it was a huge relief to me, as I was able to kind of diagnose myself and finally, seek help for it from therapists, even though it took finally going to a psychiatrist and being medicated for me to really get a handle on my anxiety. So before I really knew what social anxiety was, though, I was like, I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't be so scared of everything, I should be able to handle things, and I couldn't. And that was really difficult of a concept for me to grasp growing up. And it led to having that internal invalidating environment that I just carried around with me. And when my first depressive episode hit, that invalidating environment just got worse, because they don't talk about depression in schools, really. I mean, they touch briefly on it in health class, but they don't tell you what to do when it happens to you. And of course, you never think it's going to happen to you until it does, and suddenly you don't know how to deal. And that was me. As the depressive episode slowly overtook me, I didn't know how to deal, and it was constant put downs from myself, constantly saying, you know, I'm an awful person, my friends hate me, you know, I don't deserve any of the good in my life. And that was a really hard period of my life, when I was in high school, not knowing how to deal with my depression. And of course, I got the few breaks where I had hypomanic episodes that weren't fully developed yet, since my brain wasn't fully developed. But the breaks were very few and far between. So, I've listed off all the symptoms of being borderline before, but, you know, what does that really mean? And of course, you only need 5 of the 9 symptoms for a diagnosis. So there are over 200 ways to be borderline, and that doesn't even take into account the severity of each symptom. So I'll talk about what being borderline means for me, and it's hypersensitivity, anything that feels like criticism or rejection feels like acid against my skin, and it's rough, and I've developed kind of a sensitivity to invalidation, where if I say to someone that, you know, something hurt my feelings, and they say something along the lines of, you're being overdramatic, or you're just too sensitive, that is going to make the situation like 1,000 times worse, because suddenly I feel like I have to prove to you that I am in pain. And this is, I think, where borderlines often get the stereotype of being manipulative, and kind of people feel like we always want to be right. But it's not really about being right, it's about people accepting our truth, that we are hurt. And once people do that, it's like diffusing a bomb. It's like, okay, you understand. I don't have to prove myself to you. And this is also where radical acceptance comes in, and learning how to validate yourself. Instead of putting yourself down and saying, no, you shouldn't feel this way, you should act like a normal person, you say, I feel this way, and it's okay that I feel this way. And then you do something to try and change the way you feel. But first, you have to accept that you feel the way, otherwise you're just invalidating yourself and your struggle. And that leads to a lot of self-doubt over your feelings. So because I had this inner voice that was so critical, it really ripped away the thick skin that I had as a child, and I became very, very sensitive to criticism and to rejection. And that's kind of what it seems like the main symptom of borderline is this sensitivity to rejection. the fear of abandonment, because that's what the rejection and the criticism will lead to in the borderline's mind. And whether that's true or not, that's how the borderline is going to perceive the situation. And of course, I'm just trying to give broad examples because everyone with borderline is very different, which is why I don't understand the stereotypes based around people with borderline, because everyone experiences borderline differently. And I can really only say how I experience borderline and my own research that I've done about this disorder and hearing other people's stories. Because I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what it really means to be borderline. And of course there's the 9 symptoms listed in the DSM, but the way they interact with each other, there's the fear of abandonment, and that leads to the mood swings and kind of the irrational anger, because you have that fear of abandonment, and so your moods are easily triggered, and unfortunately sometimes anger is going to be one of those moods, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just extreme sadness, or sometimes it can be extreme happiness. There's the stress-related dissociation and paranoia. Just feeling like people are out to get you, or feeling like you're outside of your body. Borderline is a slow return to a normal baseline. It's like if this is normal emotions, you're constantly spending your time either down here or up here, and it's hard to return to that kind of stable, especially when you're around people and there's triggers just coming at you from everywhere, whether it's good things that are making you really happy or bad things that are making you really sad or angry. And it's so easy to be triggered when you're borderline. It's like the slightest change in tone or facial expression can immediately send just this overwhelming wave of anxiety through me. And that's where the fear starts, you know. And I wanted to talk about something that happens to me a lot, is I get accused of trying to make the other person out to be the bad guy. And I just want to say that I don't want the other person to be the bad guy. I mean, sure, I believe that there are bad people out there, like murderers, rapists, psychopaths, narcissists, but most people have bad and good in them, and we as humans are drawn to the good. We want to be good. And so I don't try and make other people out to be the villain or the bad guy. It's all about wanting my feelings accepted and wanting like an apology if necessary. Like if my feelings get hurt, then I just want the other person to accept that, yes, I hurt your feelings and I didn't mean to, so I'm sorry. And that's like the quickest way to defuse the borderline bomb, is just to say, you understand. Because then I'm like, oh, okay, we're cool then. You get it, you didn't mean it. And then there's nothing to get irrationally angry over. But it's that invalidation of you're being too sensitive or you're being overdramatic that will cause that irrational anger to really come out, because it's like, no, I'm not. And I feel like I gotta prove it now. And I'm not trying to place blame. I don't really care about blame. I just want acceptance of my feelings. I'm not playing the blame game where I'm just trying to lay the blame everywhere else. I know that because of this, that I'm easily triggered, that my emotions get out of control. And so I'm not trying to place the blame on anyone for that. And I don't necessarily want people in an argument to tell me, all right, you win. Like, that's not the point of me arguing. I don't argue to win. I argue to be understood, to be validated and accepted. And I don't have an ulterior motive. I'm not being manipulative. I'm just trying to be understood. And that kind of brings us back to how I said I've heard borderline described as an adult manifestation of psychological abuse. And that can be self-abuse as well, just carrying that invalidating environment around inside you. It's made you sensitive to the invalidation of other people invalidating your feelings. So that, I guess, kind of in a nutshell, is what it means for me being borderline. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. You can leave them below in the comments. Don't send me a direct message because I'm not great with technology and I don't know how to get to that and how to answer that. So, yeah, like I said, leave it in the comments. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all your likes and comments. I do what I do because I want to help people feel less alone. I want to help people understand where their illness kind of comes from. And so hearing that I'm able to do that really makes my entire day. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.